Hi everyone. It's great to be here on LP Stories. It's a real privilege and a kind of a great opportunity for me to be able to kind of talk about a lot of different things than I would talk about normally in this type of scenario, interviews and online stuff. So LP Stories is a great initiative of taking it right from the very beginning, and as we all know, I was born at a very early age, like we all are. And one of the things that was very interesting now for me looking back was the fact that, I didn't have any musical experience or exposure to music at all, pretty much up until I was like 17 years old. So there was no music in my family. We hardly ever had the radio on. So, one of the things that I would find actually later on, particularly in the early years of when I did start to drum and did start to, develop my career, was that, you'd read all these stories and people's histories and everything. And they, started at the age of 2 and, Frank Sinatra came around on Sunday afternoon and, they had lessons with Steve Gadd when they were 4 and then, all these kind of things, which like, wow, that must have been amazing, completely amazing experience for people that have been lucky enough, to have music in their life right from the very beginning. And you find that a lot in Indian culture where, it's passed down from generation to generation. And, kids just start really, really young and play blisteringly well, really young. I saw a video the other day of a great Gatan player from South India, Udappa. He put this video up of him when he was 10 years old, and it was just like, wow, ridiculous, like totally amazing. So, in a way, having that awareness in the beginning it wasn't a disincentive, but it was like kind of thinking, is there's something up with me? Am I going to be able to be a musician? And, one of the things I want to get across in this story, with the idea of starting later in life and not having experience with music or any exposure to it at all, is that, you still can get through and have a good musical life. That's a very important thing. So I was born in Portsmouth in England. It's a naval coastal town, and pretty much had a pretty uninteresting first 17 or 18 years. I worked, ended up working on the docks in Portsmouth and just an ordinary humdrum life, which actually frankly bored me to tears. And then one day, I was walking past a drum shop in Portsmouth, and Bennett's Drum Centre it was. And there was an advert in the window, drum lessons, like £5. Oh, actually, before we do that, I think we got a picture of me a little bit before this, at the age of 10. This is me when I used to go to the football a lot when I was a kid. So this was me with Roy of the Rovers. He's a football cartoon. So just to prove there was a me before I did drum. We kind of slotted that photo in there as well. So anyway, I was walking past a drum shop and there was a advert in the window, drum lessons, £5. And and just on a whim, I kind of thought, actually, why don't I pop in and just have a go? And so I went in and it was available right there and then. I'm quite a sort of in the spur of the moment type of character, so I kind of went in and it was a guy called John Hammond, and not the John Hammond, but he's a great drummer called John Hammond. And John was really nice and not judgmental or in any of the experiences that I'd had with kind of teachers and authorities and stuff like that as a child, which had been particularly negative. John was very welcoming and open. And very clear with the way that he would teach. And so I sat down and immediately could get some coordination and some patterns together. And it's just one of those things, like a light bulb moment of like, wow, this is when something cuts right through to your very core for the first time in your existence. It's it's quite an amazing moment actually. And I realised, this is what I want to do. You know, this is what I want to do. You know, with my life. And so at that point, I had 6 months left on my contract at the dockyard. So anyway, I had a couple of lessons with with John, and then after 2 weeks, I joined a punk rock band in Portsmouth, and the drummer that I replaced, actually, it was an easy gig to I mean, all it was boof chat, boof chat, boof chat. That was it, at various different tempos. That's kind of the whole repertoire, you know, of that band anyway. So anyway, the drummer before, he never used to use his bass drum, so he had it there because he put the small tom on it, you know. But so he would play gigs, and you know, you can imagine how bad the band was. He didn't use the bass drum at all, just the hi-hat and the snare, and every now and then the small tom. He didn't have a floor tom or ride cymbal or anything, you know. Just that was his thing. But then the other thing was, he would get tired halfway through a song and stop. So, you know, obviously not ideal for, you know, for the progress of the band in their musical ambitions. And so they got me in, literally after 2 weeks of lessons. And they thought I was like Buddy Rich, even though, like I say, it was just boof chat. But because the first time I played the song and I got through to the end, having used the bass drum as well, they're like, wow, that's amazing. Didn't know that was possible. So anyway, it was, the whole music thing just clicked with me. And it was, I kind of immediately knew that, like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do with my life. And now everything is going to kind of point towards, you know, trying to action that and make it happen. And I think we got a photo of me actually at the age of 19 on the very kit that I had my first drum lessons on. And anyone from Portsmouth of my age would recognise the that old Ajax drum set and in the Bennett's teaching room. The shop used to be managed by a guy called Roy Huggett. He was an old jazz player, and just like a totally lovely guy. And some of the stories he would tell, when he used to go to gigs, he used to put his, because he didn't have a car or anything, and he used to put all of his drums in a wheelbarrow, and then he used to tie the wheelbarrow to his push bike, to his cycle, and that's how he'd get around between gigs, which is, you know, pretty amazing. I'd love to have seen a picture of it, but, you know, he didn't have one. But the sad thing about Roy, and, you know, it is really sad, he would have laughed his head off at it, actually, but he got killed by a floor tom. And it's no joke. He was in his car, and he was, you know, years later after I'd moved to London, and he stopped, and he packed the floor tom, and it went through and you know, took him out. But Roy, honestly, would have thought he'd have laughed, you know, he'd have thought that's a funny way to go. It's like the you know, the musician who falls over on the last note on the cello and squashes the cello, or, you know, Tommy Cooper or something, you know. So yeah, a great person. And also Roy and John were very you know, formative in supporting me, and also sort of saying, actually, you can do this, you know, this is, you know, you've got a talent for this, and, you know, you should pursue it. So, you know, we need these people in our lives. You know, it's not like we can learn in a vacuum and, you know, just take criticism and you know, beat ourselves up the whole time. It's really important to, you know, to get yourself around people that support and nurture and help you grow, you know, not just as a musician, but as a person as well. And so Roy and John were great in that way. And then when I came to you know, move to London after the contract finished with the dockyard, I did my driving lesson in the morning, because I thought, well, I've got to be able to drive if I'm going to be in London and try and, you know, do something as a drummer. Then I've got to be able to drive. So I took my driving lesson in the morning. It was like 10:30, and then I got the 12 o'clock train, and I passed my driving test and then got on the train. I remember the train going out of Portsmouth, and I was, you know, Roy was having his sandwiches parked up by the railway line, waving goodbye to me. And so in a way, that was you know, up until that point, you know, it was learning that I loved music and drumming, and that's what I wanted to do. Was a kind of you know, a very you know, it's an easy thing because it's almost something that you're kind of made for, and it's not you don't have to do, if you really are completely into what you do, you don't have to convince yourself that you need to practice or suffer hardships to, you know, further what you do. You know, it just is naturally part of the whole thing. So anyway, I moved to London, and that's when, you know, actually it got really tough for quite a few years because first of all, I didn't have any money, and I used to live in a bedsit, like a little one-room bedsit place. That's just a bed, literally a bed in a room. You know, bathroom was shared with other people in the house and stuff like that. And it was in the basement, so it didn't have any windows, and it had been used as a concrete store before I rented it as a room. So you'd get out of bed and there'd be this dust and stuff everywhere. You know, hoover it as much as you like, it's still there. I don't know what it was. And then above the shower area, there was the doorstep of the house, and it was a giant concrete slab. It was kind of about the size of I don't know, size of a piano, kind of wide. This big concrete doorstep, big old, you know, Victorian house, and it was split across the middle, and you could see it when if you were in the bathroom underneath it, you could hear it creaking when someone was on the front door. So you kind of, so I learned the very quick bathroom stop, you know, which was very useful on the road later as time went on. So in the beginning, it was very tough because, you know, not knowing anyone, not having any money, and you know, or very little money. It was kind of it was tough to keep hold of the idea of why I was doing it. That's probably the only time since I started drumming, the only small period of time that I kind of almost forgot why I was doing it, because it was so abstract. I was going through so much, you know, garbage to live, just to basically live, that it's. I mean, nowadays it's much harder, and I feel, you know, sorry for people, because, you know, the idea you come to London, you know, I mean, the second flat that I had in London after I'd escaped from this horrendous place, the second flat I had in London was £25 a week. You know, and now you're not going to get something for less than, you know, £300 a week. You know, how can you, you know, move to a capital city of somewhere and then try and pursue a career as a musician? It just makes it impossible for a lot of people, which is a really sad thing, and I'm sure that's reflected, you know, everywhere in the world. So anyway, you know, I kind of moved into London. I finally got somewhere, you know, different to live. I started, you know, playing in different bands and getting auditions and doing, you know, just basically making inroads as a rock drummer at the time. And the first, I suppose, the first real prominent gig that I got with a name was with Lowell Fulson. And I think we got a picture with Lowell here. This is a couple of years after moving to London. This was at the 100 Club in London. Now, Lowell Fulson was an amazing, you know, old school blues player, and like a really lovely guy. And we did a couple of tours and a few different bits and bobs. But I always remember probably one of the most important lessons in my life, in a way, at that point, was I remember the first gig, the sound, you know, there's no rehearsal, just turn up, you do the sound check, and then you do the gig. I mean, you had the album and everything to listen to everything. And I remember starting the sound check, and then, you know, sound check the drums and blah, blah, blah. And then we all played together. So we played like, I don't know, 10 bars of a song. And he just turned around, he said, man, just relax, you know, just relax. And I'm like, oh, is that okay? I can relax, brilliant. And it made such a huge difference that, you know, the little things that people can say that make a huge difference. And I think that's one of the things, one of the responsibilities that we then take on board as teachers, you know, later on in life. Hey Vinod, how are you, mate? I'm going to talk about Vinod later on, because Vinod was a big part of my project in Rajasthan in India when I was there a few years ago. Yeah, the responsibility that we have as teachers, the things that we say, you know, if you're annoyed that someone isn't getting something fast enough, or, you know, it's kind of difficult to adjust between different students who pick things up at different speeds, you know, and just we need to be aware of the, you know, the impact that small things can have on people. You know, saying certain things can, you know, damage people forever, really. You know, that's why a lot of people's childhoods and education is so negative, because they've been you know, put down and trodden on, you know, in ways that aren't you know, don't really support them developing as an individual. So that's our responsibility as teachers, you know, to be able to cut through that and to be supportive and to convey the truth in a way that isn't damaging. So, you know, I think that's, it's not like you're going to say, oh wow, that's brilliant, and, you know, someone's absolutely nowhere near doing something. It's the way, diplomacy with that education thing. And I think those sort of things, when they happen to you, like Lowell turning around and saying that, not saying, you know, man, what are you doing? You know, it sounds horrible. You know, why are you so stiff? It's a completely different thing than saying, man, just relax. It's fun. It's music, you know. So the thing with Lowell made me realise for the first time, actually, that I could. I mean, I always believed that I could. You know, we call it succeed or whatever you want to call it. But really, I would always say to have a life in music. You know, that to me, that's regardless of you know, whatever you achieve in photogenic gigs and events and stuff like that. You know, if you have a life in music, to me, that's a successful musical life without any shadow of a doubt. And so that kind of made me think, actually, I can be patient, and I can wait for you know, different opportunities to come along, and you know, and that gave me a lot of you know, belief to be able to practice and to develop as an individual. Now, because of my education in the beginning, lessons weren't an easy thing for me to succumb to, shall we say. John and that were great, you know, the lessons that I had with them. But, you know, I remember going to, you know, a prominent drum teacher in the UK, and, you know, he was so dismissive and so like, oh, you got to stop everything, you know, it basically isn't valid. And, you know, you got to rebuild again, and I'll show you how to rebuild it, which, you know, okay, maybe he was right, you know, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's a place to be entirely negative when you're teaching someone. I think it's a very important role. When this really turned around for me, the idea of actually really taking on board being a student and having a teacher was when I discovered Indian music. So around this time, you know, I was just, you know, playing in various local bands. You know, we had some success, you know, Glastonbury with the band with my friends, a band called Lovely Money with Horace Trowbridge, who was a great saxophone player at the time. He used to play in a band called Darts. Now he's the boss of the Musicians Union in the UK. Yeah, it's so funny how your paths kind of cross back, you know, 20, 30 years later. But the Indian thing really was a massive transformation for me in terms of discovering an even more detailed life path. And again, it was a completely random event that led to me studying Indian rhythm and Indian music. There was a big Indian festival in Alexander Park in London, and it'd been there weeks. You know, they built life-size temples, and I've been there with a friend a few times. We've walked around, you know, eating some food, and I mean, I knew nothing about Indian culture, you know. And then one day my friend lived really very close to this park. And so one day we've had supper, we're sitting there, it's this balmy summer evening and the window's open and this music, this music comes through the window. We're like, wow, what's that? It's like music that I'd never heard before in my life. It was just like music from Mars in a way. It was just like, wow, what's that? We've got to go and find out what that is. So we've gone into the park, and there was, at that time, Alexander Palace itself had burnt down, and they built a temporary concert hall, which is kind of the size of I don't know, like a small football stadium, really. I don't know what the capacity would be, maybe 2,000 or 3,000, I think. So anyway, it was a free concert. So we walked in, went in the back. It was rammed, completely rammed. Very simple stage lighting, nothing, you know, just a couple of lights on the performers, and this massive sound coming out. And it was, you know, I found out later, it was the late great Ali Akbar Khan, sarod player, and the one of the living percussion gods, in my opinion, Zakir Hussain on the tabla. And you know, it's just like one of those things, and you see it for the first time through a giant, massive PA in a you know blasting out, and no you know, light show and smoke and flames coming out of things, and you know, just the music, just the pure music, and it was just like overwhelming actually with its power. It was absolutely incredible. And so I made a mental note of that and thought, you know, you can't imagine how you would learn it when you see something like that for the first time. You just can't even comprehend how you could get a foot in the door with it. You know, it's just this amazing thing, and it's like, wow. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, I lived in Tottenham at that time. The £25 a week flat, actually. I was circling back to, we'll get, everything will be linked together by the end. So anyway, I'm in this £25 a week flat, and a free newspaper has come through the front door and fallen open on the mat, and there was a big advert for tabla lessons. And I was like, wow, that's really weird. And it was just up the road in Wood Green, not far from where I was. So in the local Asian centre. So I enrolled for this course, and went along. And you know, group tabla lessons are always funny, because the first week, you know, the first lesson, there's always like 30 or 40 people, and they're all like, yeah, I'm going to learn the tabla. And then the second week, it's at least half of them have gone. And then the same ratio for the third week. But after like 4 or 5 lessons, it was just me and one other guy, because everyone it's so hard to actually, you know, grasp it. But for me, it was fascinating, because it's obviously the technical challenges and all that, but also the fact that like everything was completely different. You know, the drums, the way you play the drums, you've got the bass with one hand and the treble with another hand. You don't really cross over that much as you would like on bongos or something like that. The way the drums are put together and tuned, the black spot and the way you strike and all of the different tones, and then the phonetics, and then being in the Asian centre, you know, the Asian people, everything was like different and really interesting, and like you just want to know more about it. You know, it's just completely mesmerising, really. And so I kind of got like deep into it. And after a couple of lessons, there was just me and the other guy, and the other guy wasn't doing so well. And so it's kind of be, you know, I'd be doing this lesson, and then we'd go to him, and it would be right back to you know, whatever. And that's not like saying, oh, look, I could do it. You know, I couldn't. It's really hard, and it's just that we were, you know, kind of working at a different speed. I don't know, maybe his day job, or I don't know what. Anyway, after this one, you know, a couple of times this happened, and the Yusuf Ali Khan was the teacher. Great, lovely guy. Actually, the nephew of Ali Akbar Khan, who was the Indian sarod player that I saw in the first concert. And so he said, look, just come to my house, and you know, I just teach you, you know, so you don't have to worry about that. And so that's when I started to really get into the whole Indian kind of music thing, and became really quite committed to it and started to spend a lot of time on it. The other thing is with in terms of practice, for me to practice drum set, I didn't have the money for like studios and stuff like that. And so what happened was the guy next door, if I started drumming, he would go, I mean, he's this big, massive guy. He'd come out in the front of the house and start throwing stuff at the window and just going totally berserk. So, you know, it's a little bit of a disincentive, actually. It throws you off your ratamakus a bit when you've got like the Incredible Hulk outside your window throwing stones at you. And so, of course, he couldn't hear the tabla. So it meant that I could practice the tabla easier, you know, more easily than I could practice on any drum sets. Obviously, practice pads and that were okay. So in the beginning, it was the tabla thing was just to complement my drum set playing. I was starting to look for ideas that I could take into the drum set world. And at that time, in terms of like transcribing, I was really into transcribing stuff. And so, you know, with my record player, I worked out that by putting different numbers of coins on top of the stylus, it would play at different speeds. You know, I mean, trash the record, but you could kind of, you know, work out stuff a little bit easier. And then the only other option was going down to the library, and you couldn't take the records out. But what you do is you'd find a record, you'd give it to them behind the counter, and they'd say booth 22. So you go over to booth 22, quickly put the headphones on, and then try and scrabble as many notes as you can, because there's no pause. Literally, they're just playing it from behind the desk, and you've got to try and catch as much as you can before each track, you know, gets to its end. So that was the only alternatives in terms of you know, transcribing and stuff like that. But the thing that I found with tabla was, and Indian rhythms generally, was that it was incredibly hard to work out how any of those ideas could be employed in, you know, at that point for me, it was kind of a rock drum set scenario. Partly because of how the music itself works and how it's put together, and the role of the percussion within the music. There's so many things that make it more difficult to begin to sew links between. I mean, I did, you know, kind of work a lot of stuff out in terms of what was happening and how I could cross fertilize. But at that point I couldn't. And so the Indian study became a study in its own right. And that completely took over. I got into South Indian rhythm and lessons with a great Mridangam player called Karakudi Krishnamurti. He was just like great. He was a Bharatanatyam dance specialist, and so he would he like a lot of the syllables would be a little bit more poetic, if you like, and lyrical than a straight Mridangam player. There's different, you know, you get like dance specialist, you get a vocal music specialist, and you like instrumental accompanist specialist, and obviously soloist mainly. So his area was the dance. So I learned Mridangam and Natwangam, which is the vocal recitations, and you play these little bells at the same time. So, but it's tricky because the bells are playing what the dancer is dancing, and the phonetics that you're speaking are doing what the percussionist is playing. So you kind of got these two different patterns going on. So it's a little bit, you know, a complex challenge to piece it all together. So I got like deep into that whole thing, and I had probably about six-year period. I think we got a picture with Karakudi Krishnamurti. This is yeah, like young. I've got the same haircut now. It's a different colour though. Yeah. So again, he was a very, very supportive, as Yusuf was, you know, supportive, open teacher in terms of you know, supporting you and making sure that that you were inspired the whole time, and that you that you knew if you were doing well on stuff. You know, you make that clear. It wasn't like you'd hide that information completely. So I had a 6-year period, mainly with Karakudi Krishnamurti. And I used to have 4 4-hour lessons a week, and I would just practice the whole time. That's all I did. I ate very simply. I got rid of all my furniture and TV and everything from the flat. I think everyone thought I was like totally bonkers, actually. But I got rid of the curtains. Like, everything went from the flat. And I just had this very simple lifestyle of practicing all the time, and having these lessons. So it was pretty amazing, amazing experience to go through that, and to be focused so much on that music. And one of the things that happened actually out of that was that before I'd really got into the Indian music side of things, used to listening to bands. Obviously, you've got keyboards, bass, guitar, drums, saxophone, blah, blah, blah. And then I got into the Indian thing, which is much more stripped down. You might have sitar and tabla, or vocal and one drum. So my hearing got completely focused on that very almost clear, uncluttered way of putting music together. And then it was very difficult for me when I came out of that kind of Indian phase, if you want to call it that, to actually listen to bands again, because at that time I wasn't really doing any drum set playing. I was just completely into the Indian thing. It totally took over everything, and so it was hard to go back and listen to complex complex piling up of different instruments and different tones and different timbres and different things. And I mean, now I it's easy to differentiate between the two, but it was, at the time, it was a very interesting experience to be aware of that. It's pretty amazing, because you see music in a completely different way. It's almost like colors or something like that. It's whether it's transparent or different things. So anyway, so I was going through this whole thing of learning the Indian thing, and then I was starting to learn other instruments. Like I said, I was learning the natwangam, the vocal recitation and stuff like that, kanjira, and bringing different things into the mix. And then I was about to start learning the tavil, which is an amazing South Indian drum. And then I just thought, you know what? I mean, I could carry on learning different drums ad infinitum. I could just carry on, add another drum every 5 years. And I thought, actually, no, what I've got to do, I've got to change. So I've got to look at that information that I've gathered as a resource for me, within me. And now I've got to work out what I'm going to do with it, because I never, even through all of those Indian studies, I never wanted to be a classical Indian musician. I always saw gathering all of that stuff as with a different end. I mean, I did play classical concerts, and of course anyone who learns classical Indian drums or instruments is going to end up doing that, but I never saw that as my end goal, even though that was probably an unconscious realization, but it was definitely part of the thing. So that's when I came to sort of think, actually, I'm not going to learn the tavil. What I'm going to do is try and get a career together. And so for me, one of the most complex things, I think, when you are starting out as a musician and you're starting to get your foot on the ladder, it's really disheartening, because you don't know what to do or how to do it, or it's impossible. There's no, and people ask in clinics, how do I make it? Well, often they'll say, and it's like, well, actually, you can't answer. It's not a question that can be answered. You almost got to leave it to fate, in a way. And I look back on my life, and a lot of the turns and a lot of the things, have been, based in, fate, really. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to try and generate some sort of a career. So then I started thinking, well, I've got this, I'd started to look at a few other bits of percussion around this time, not non-Indian percussion like bongos and stuff like that, not in a traditional sense. I was guided by there's a percussionist called Mark Anderson, actually, who played with a great guitarist called Steve Tibbets, who's just like a brilliant kind of free roaming musical explorer. And I was drawn to it partly because Mark Anderson plays tabla and other percussion, but not in a traditional way. And so that's what was really interesting for me, was to see how that was part of his musical voice in a way, and that was kind of pushed me into some of the decisions that I made in terms of developing my own voice. And so I started to get these different instruments, and then I was thinking, well, I don't know how on earth I'm going to get a career going, because obviously, local gigs and stuff like that had kind of stopped because I'd gone into the Indian thing so deeply. So it was almost like starting from completely zero again. And so I was, just doing everything, I would mail out loads of cassettes, and I used to do these little postcards with different stuff on, and I'd mail them to musicians, and I would try everything, I'd get the musicians union book, and I'd find all the addresses and send people stuff. And then I'd randomly phone people up, just literally cold call people and say, oh, do you want a bit of percussion or something? It's like, and actually it did work. It was some stuff came out of that was, it's probably maybe a 2% success rate if you're lucky, and some amazing failures as well. I remember phoning up one guy, and what my technique was that once they'd pick the phone up, I would just be like words at them down the phone. I wouldn't let them get a word in edgeways, just so I got my message across. And so I did this to one guy. And then, I went on blah, 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 Pete Lockett, I'll do this now. And there was just silence after that. And I was like, oh. And he said, man, it's 4 o'clock in the morning here, I'm like, oh, okay. So I haven't got the gig then. Yeah, so that was, sometimes it goes off the rails a little bit, but, I was trying everything. And then a few things started to come out. Like there was a session agency in London called Session Connection. I don't know if they're still there. I don't know. But I got a gig with a recording gig, an album with a band called Thunder, who were like a heavy metal band here. And so things started to happen. I started to get some sessions and started to get, it's one of those things. It's like once you've done a name band, it's almost like you can just say that and people are like, oh, Before that, I had like an inflatable CD, like you write a CV on a balloon and puff it up, and all these names that no one had heard of, different performance that Bill and Fred, and I worked extensively with Jonathan, all this kind of stuff that you try and like, yeah, look, I have done something. But as soon as you've got a couple of names, it's like almost like the door. Oh yeah, you've worked with them. It's fine. We can employ you now. We know you've done something. So that was a kind of revelation in a way, because once you've once you realize that, then you start to realize a little bit more how to push your marketing to people and what to send and what to do. One of the mistakes that I made in the beginning was to be sending out stuff that I'd written kind of as a composer, soloist sort of thing. But then people aren't interested in that. If they want to hire you for a session, that's not what they want to hear to judge it. That is in verse a little bit later on in my conversation. Yeah, so once I'd started to get a few different names, I got some tracks with Bjork, and a few different things came in, and suddenly it was all on percussion by this time. I was entirely doing percussion. So I was doing the sessions and accompanying, generally speaking. There was a lot of stuff with tabla that I was doing, not so much with indie musicians, but with like African kora players and different world musicians. A lot of stuff was kind of opening up around that thing, but very much as an accompanist. And I remember I did a gig in Sardinia with a kora player actually, and coincidence, the promoter came from Portsmouth, where I come from, and I was like, oh, so we got on and we had a chat, blah blah. Anyway, I got back the day after I got back to England. He phoned me up. He said, oh, do you want to do a gig? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what was it? He said, it's a solo gig. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was just like instantly said, yeah, of course, put the phone down, like panic, I had no idea what to do. But anyway, it was at the festival had fallen through at the Royal Festival Hall in London, and they decided to put a percussion festival on, and he was hastily putting it together. And so I said, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And I put this project together with a great Japanese, contemporary Japanese percussionist and all-round musician and melody player and singer, and a guy called Joji Hirota. And the project was called Taiko to Tabla. And we did I think we got a picture of Taiko to Tabla here, which is there's a lot of drums there actually, so the project sold out, and it was like the gig sold out, and then we got a record label that wanted us to release a record, so we started doing recording and doing gigs with that. And that first gig Bill Bruford came to, and came backstage afterwards, and we were having a good chat. And he was like, oh, do you want to do something together? I was like, wow, yeah, it'd be amazing. And he lived near Guildford, and I knew someone who was on the Tonmeister course there. There's like the kind of tone master course, a sound engineering course. I think there's 2 courses in Europe that do that, one in England and one in Germany. It's like super ultra trained sound engineers. And they have free studio time because they do got to build their own project. And so we went down there and just recorded some stuff, and then I think we got a picture of the project that went on to become Network of Sparks, a great really great project. We had a great band. It was Bill, great percussionist Nana Sebo, Johnny Kelsey of the Dole Foundation, and Simon Limbrick, who's a great kind of contemporary classical percussionist. So it was a real mix, Indian, African, kind of different, different, lots of different cultural influences and styles, and mixing and merging, and that did really well. We did a Contemporary Music Network tour of the UK, and this is when my session life started to change a little bit, because now I'd released these 2 albums, Taiko to Tabla and Network of Sparks, and instead of being called in as a generic sort of percussionist, do this, we want a Latin thing, or we want this, or we want that, people were calling me in to do stuff that they'd heard in my collaborations and recordings, and so that kind of changed the session direction quite a lot. And at that time I made the decision as well to not to do any touring at all with anything other than my own project. So I stopped cancelled any tours that were in the book, and decided that, so I'm just going to focus on this. It was fine because I'm doing the sessions, and it's like kind of 50-50. I'm kind of balancing both things as they develop. Funnily enough, like saying, these connections, later on we talk about like friendships and stuff like that. A lot of the connections in the music business, last throughout your entire life. So at the moment I've got a cool new project with a great keyboard player, Peter John Vertesi, and we've got an artist in residence series coming up in theatre in the south of England, and one of those sessions is going to involve Bill interviewing us, because obviously he's retired from music now. So all these strands kind of all come through and make sense together. So by making that choice, of deciding, well, I'm not going to tour because I don't want to turn down, gigs that I get. for collaborations and stuff like that. And then to focus more on the recordings as well, and the touring with my projects, and then alongside that, slotting in the sessions. If you can't do a session because you're away, then they can either rearrange it or you just don't do it. So it kind of worked really well, and it's a really good balance actually, because alongside all of that, you were kind of getting a lot of kind of photogenic names that you could put on your CV, and that kind of helps the collaborations and the marketing for those things and for those different releases. And so I started to get quite productive, and started to tour quite a lot with my own projects. And also around this time, I got a call from Steve Smith, who started to get heavily into the Indian thing. He was doing the London Drum Show solo, and I can't remember if we met before that. We must have done, because he knew to call me. Anyway, he called me and he was like, "Do you want to play like a duet piece in the London Drum Show?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, definitely." I mean, it terrified me, to be perfectly honest with you. But I said, "Yeah, definitely, let's do it." But I looked at my diary. It was really short notice. I was in Poland with Doug Wimbish and Adrian Sherwood, and on the On You Sound thing, I did a lot of stuff with, and I did odd gigs with Adrian. And I was in Poland the night before, so it meant that I finished the gig, had to travel overnight, and literally from the airport in London to Wembley, had like 20 minutes to run the piece in the dressing room with Steve, and then on stage and do it. And that was an amazing turning point for me, because it steered me more. Up to that point, it had been the sessions and the collaborations, but this kind of pulled me more into the industry side of things, in the drum industry and the world of clinics and all that stuff. And it was a great new thing to add into my kind of daily life and repertoire and everything. It was a really great new thing for me. And so I started to get into conceptualizing a better education package, and that came about with my release, the book with Hudson, Indian Rhythms for the Drum Set, which was kind of full circle back from what I was saying earlier about not being able to voice the Indian stuff on the drum set, not knowing how, and then finally to be able to sort of, through education, through being involved in these education things and teaching it to drum set players, kind of forced me into developing the vocabulary in such a way as could be developed on drum set. So that became a whole new thing. And then through that, I met Benny Greb at the Mark Toberdorf drum camp, and we got on really well, and we did a few bits and bobs together. And then he asked me to do his DVD at the time, and so we went off to Bavaria. I think we got a picture of us in the field. Yeah, it was just a brilliant session recording that piece. Just in the middle of a take, a cow would come in, and you have to stop and start again, and it's just a really interesting experience. And it kind of all started to tie together in the sense that I've got this education kind of package, and I'm now extrapolating that into the world of drum set, or the technique of drum set, should we say. And now then with Steve and Benny, starting to find out ways to compose with that for drum set and percussion. So all these kind of strands were coming together. I mean, I still had the session thing was still going on. It was around this time I was doing a lot of film work with David Arnold. I did 5 of the 007 movies, which was great, iconic sort of thing to do. For me, it was an amazing experience. I did a lot with Craig Armstrong, like Moulin Rouge, quite American, a lot of different films. So, you know, I kind of was keeping all of the you know, juggling all the balls, if you like, at the same time. And then because of the collaborations and multi-ethnic collaborations that I've been putting together, the British Council started to tour me around the world. So it was a great format, because I would, you know, pick 2 or 3 musicians from, you know, UK based, because it was the British Council thing, obviously. So Nana, for example, Nana Sibo was someone that I would use a lot on those. Stefan Hannigan, an Irish musician. So put different collaboration, different groups of people together that were quite eclectic, classical percussionists and different things. And then, you know, you'd go off to different countries, and you spend like 3 or 4 days rehearsing with these different, you know, I would always make sure that it was folk and traditional groups rather than, you know, bass guitar and drums and stuff like that. So to keep it very kind of rootsy. And, you know, we toured all over. We did Sudan and Azerbaijan and Pakistan, you know, India, lots of different things. And the Pakistan, you know, I mean, I'd learned all of the Indian stuff, but I'd never been to that part of the world, you know, Pakistan, India. All of my studies were in London, as I said earlier, you know. And so to go, I was off in a tour in Pakistan with an amazing guitarist called Mikhail Hassan, who's just totally brilliant guitarist. And it was just a great opportunity, because you could put all of these different things together. You know, they you know, the British Council said, "Oh, what do you want to put together for this?" You know, and I'll put this together. And then I went to did my first tour of India, which was to about 2001, I think, and with Selva Ganesh, again a British Council tour, and that was really important for me, because what it did was it opened up the whole Indian world of musicians for me, in the sense that, you know, on those type of tours, if you're working with someone like Selva or a top end sort of player, effectively, you know, you meet a lot of the top players because they all come to the gigs. It's a very close knit community, the whole classical Indian, you know, musical world. And so I then had the great honor to play with Selva and T.H. Viku Vinayakaran in Chennai, which was, you know, for me, you know, Vikuji is just like a Selva as well, you know, but you know, Viku is just like, he's one of those people that you meet that's, you know, there's no, I'm sure he's never spoken a bad word in his life, you know, he's just like pure goodness. He's like just an amazing person, and just a great educator and a great player. And, you know, you sit with him and you're inspired, you know, immediately inspired. And so to actually, and, you know, obviously his history with Shakti and John McLaughlin, and besides, obviously, you know, the A-list of working with the top Indian, classical, North and South Indian. Actually, he took a lot of risks when he worked with Shakti, because, you know, it meant that, you know, his gig with All India Radio was not there anymore. So, you know, huge risk, and you know, much deserved, you know, lauding for everything that he achieved out of that. You know, total legend, really. I mean, even during lockdown, you know, he was I was doing all my lockdown videos, and I did one with Viku. You know, he was in his hotel. He was stranded in a hotel for, I think, like 6 weeks or something in Mumbai, because he'd come back from New York, and then they stopped in Mumbai and to fly on to Chennai, but that's when lockdown happened, and he got stuck in this hotel. And still, even in the hotel, you know, it's like, yeah, we'll do a video, you know, I'll send you the video over, and we'll do that. Like, mate, such an inspiring person. Up to that point, pretty much everything I'd done in India had been with classical or kind of fusion players as well. You know, there's a huge, amazing, brilliantly talented artists coming out of India playing, you know, Western stuff. You know, absolutely great players, drum set players, bass players, guitarists, just ridiculous, actually, just really you know, totally cool. But I got the opportunity, an amazing project, to go to Rajasthan. Promoter had said, you know, look, do you want to come out to Rajasthan? We're going to develop a project over, you know, over, well, 6 months really. So I went out to Jaipur, drove out into the desert for 6 hours, spent a couple of days out in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, these little villages. And, you know, I think we got a couple of pictures in the villages. There's me in the village. It's a drum called matar, which is a just giant clay pot with a head kind of fixed to it. And what was amazing about that was that you're going out, and this was a big change for me in terms of philosophy of music, because what I realized was that in those communities, I mean, you don't see it so much in a big city, even though you're working with people and those are the values that they have. But when you go to a village and you kind of, it's stripped back like that, and you realize that actually music is just literally part of their everyday life. It's not something, you know, that they do to be successful or to achieve at, or to be fashionable, or you know, make money at, or it's just literally part of everyday life. You know, it's the a priori existence of music. And it made me realize that, you know, in many ways we've kind of lost some of those elements in the way that we're experiencing music now, because here, you know, music is more of it's a commodity or a fad or a fashion, something you achieve at, make money at, you know. And it's not that one is better than the other, or wrong or right. Obviously the ideal mix and balance is exactly that, right in the middle and stuff. But what was great about that trip, particularly the first exploration into the villages, was seeing how much it was part of their everyday life, and what that gave to the community. And then, you know, it comes from, you know, the community. You can only have culture if you've got a community. Otherwise it's just a product, you know. So realizing that was quite a light bulb moment for me in many ways, and kind of really made me kind of focus in on philosophically on what music was about for me. So anyway, I got this chance we went to the different villages, and we put together, you know, about 35 different musicians. I chose 2 from here, 3 from there, 4 from there. And this is what Vinod, who came in earlier, was saying. Put all these musicians together and make this project. And it was incredibly complex, because it's all these different villages. They've all got different drums, different dialects, different, you know, different music. Everything's different. Everything was different. And then, so to bring them together, you know, you needed 2 or 3 different translators to be able to make the project happening. And I was kind of putting it together almost like a, you know, like a patchwork. You know, I was kind of piecing things together and transitions between this and that. And it was a mixture of different, you know, farmers, labourers, and trained musicians. And so it was a real interesting, really interesting project. And we did some. I went back, you know, like a month later, then we did a week's rehearsal, and then I went back again, and then we rehearsed again, and then started to do some gigs with the Lucknow Festival. I think we got some pictures of some of the gigs. This was in Lucknow. You can see the dancers with from the village just up the road from the picture. You know, this is Lucknow, and then the next one. This is actually, this was the festival hall in London when we brought the project over to the UK. And there's this was the first gig, and this was on an amazing experience. It was on Jodhpur Fort, the top of Jodhpur Fort, midnight, full moon, open air thing, just a completely incredible life experience, actually, to be able to do that. So, you know, for me to have after all of the studies earlier on, which was kind of abstract, you know, I'm studying something almost like a scientist observing something, really. But then to go to India and make all those connections and make all that a reality, really bring all that together as one philosophical thing was really important. And you know, then I went on to do probably, I think I had about 15 albums out in India in a 15-year period with lots of different classical artists. I think we got one with Bikram Ghosh. This is with Bikram's father, Pandit Shankar Ghosh. This is one of the albums made in Kolkata. And then I think we got some video pictures as well with yeah, this is with Bikram. He's an absolute great, totally brilliant tabla player, the son of Shankar Ghosh. This was a video, and this was another video that I did. But these were life-threatening videos. I mean, that like the first one with Bikram, there was one scene that was shot inside this very small kind of tent thing, just like almost like a giant sheet wrapped around in like an upside down ice cream cone, and kind of I was in the middle of it, and either side, maybe a foot away, were those flames that you saw in the picture, those giant bowls with flames coming out. Oh, this not, it's a different picture. Anyway, the on the album cover, not this album cover, another one, you see the bowls. They're not in any of these pictures, but these bowls with flames coming out, you know. And I said to the guys, I said, you know, it's flame proof, isn't it? And he's like, oh no. And I said, look, you've got like 30 seconds to get the shot. And I was in there, you know, blah, and out, you know. And another, when I did the video, the one of me on top of the lorry, that was in in Bombay port, in Mumbai port, and there's an old mill there that's deserted, and they use it in a lot of Bollywood films and a lot of stuff like that. Brilliant place, amazing, really spooky. You wouldn't want to go there late at night, I tell you. But it's a brilliant place to be, completely incredible. And it's like when we were doing the videos, it was like raining, and it was with a band called Bandish, that one actually. And I'm like set up. I've got my setup there. I'm doing, you know, filming some stuff, and then I hear like this right next to me. I hear like a loud bang. It's almost like someone, you know, letting off a hand grenade or something. This massive loud bang. And so I carried on because we're doing the shoot, you know, I don't know what. And then we finished the shoot, and I looked down, and it's this like a lump of concrete that's like, I can't get both hands in the where's the camera? Anyway, so like this massive, you know, 3 foot by 2 foot lump of concrete had fallen from the roof of this video shoot. So that was, you know, that was a pretty scary moment indeed. Actually, that thing. So you know, taking life in your own hands sometimes when you're doing videos around the world. But you know, they're experiences that you'd never give up at all, ever. The idea in the beginning, you know, that we have, you know, people that we work with throughout our careers, and they pop up again, and they're here and there. And to me, it becomes a really important part of my life as a musician, because the friendships and the bonds that you make with people really last a long time, and you're continually you know, meeting people in different parts, like in the industry, for example. You know, like I knew Jerry when he was at Remo. Now he's at, you know, DWLP. So you start, and these friendships are really important in life, actually. And I think we got a picture of me with Don and Chad Smith. I mean, Chad Smith kind of goes back to the period when I first did rhythm sticks. He used to be very good friends with Louise King at Rhythm and Steve White, and you know, he did some of the rhythm events and stuff like that. And so I kind of knew him from then. But then also coming back full circle, you know, I got to know Don Lombardi through doing some before I was with LP and DW, doing some drum channel stuff, and here we got with my hybrid kit from one of the video shoots. And what's amazing, it's a little bit like, you know, Karakudi Krishnamurti and you know, John Hammond, and there's people in your life, in your musical life, that kind of circle back round and you know, mean a lot to you, because what they are is just pure passion for what they do. When I first did drum channel, and you know, hung out with Don for a few days, and it was just like, wow. First of all, he knows so much. He's such an expert in the whole thing. But it's the passion, you know, it's the passion for what he does, and his love of drums, and the whole thing. It just pulls you into that world. And it kind of goes back to you know, to what I was saying earlier, really, about our responsibility as teachers, because, you know, it's for us to inspire the students. You know, I mean, of course, the students have got to. There's an Indian saying that the student shows the teacher what to teach, which is actually is a valid point. But often that you know, that cycle of energy comes out of the enthusiasm of the teacher, and I think those relationships that last through your, you know, your whole life. That's why they're so important, you know, so valued, you know, to cherish them. You know, if you come back and especially now, you know, and we got like the whole thing's off the rails temporarily, and you start to think, oh, you know, I hope everyone's all right. You know, you've got your friends and your colleagues and people that have been you know, passionate about drums and playing music for their whole lives, and it's a terrible time, yeah, for everyone. The important thing, I think, for me at this moment, you know, going back to the beginning, like when I moved to London and when I was trying to get involved in the music industry, and it was a complete mystery to me. I think what that does is gives you an ability to survive. And I think musicians have got an innate ability to be able to survive extreme circumstances. And I think that's the thing that will, you know, that will kind of save us as individuals and as a community, is that knowledge of, you know, that we've fought against the odds. You know, I mean, for me, being a dock worker to, you know, developing a happy musical career, you know, is an important thing, you know. So of course you've got to continue to look for new avenues, and at the moment that's really hard. That's why for me having the project with Peter John Vitesi is an important thing, because it gives us the opportunity to spend, next week we're going to be spending a whole week with full production and filming and everything, to put you know, to put that product out. There's a great guy called Paul Cameron who's masterminding the whole thing. But then also to think outside the box in terms of, like, for me, I've always been interested in electronics, you know. So for me, the hybrid setups that I've got, you know, like loads of Udus. I think we've got a picture of loads of Udus and stuff like that. It's like putting, you know, crazy hybrid things together. Having this idea that think outside the box, get into electronics, include that as part of your hybrid, you know, hybrid setup. And you know, for me, I developed an app which does really well, Drum Jam, and currently developing a percussion plugin for Contact, which will be primarily not so much, you know, you want some bongos and congas and this and that. It's really using percussion as a sound source for sound design. So they're the kind of things that you know, that I'm you know, pushing towards to you know, keep myself interested and you know, wait for this whole thing to pass and hopefully come out of it and build to a much brighter future, you know. I don't know if we've got any questions come in at all, or Do I play the mridangam besides the tabla? Yeah, actually, I studied the. I studied mridangam more than the tabla, to be honest. But I don't really play it that much. Play it that much now. But yeah, mridangam was just a massive study for me, and of course that's where all the konnakol ideas come from, and it's very interesting, you know, the North and the South Indian systems that you know, so you could say in a sense that some people would say that the South Indian is more mathematical and the North Indian is more poetic, you know, in the way that it's structured. But you know, the two styles are a fascinating study, and so for me, studying mridangam was a massive part of my development for sure. Thank you. You know, developing something like that is that, like my app, the Drum Jam app, is I wanted it to be, and again, it was starting from nowhere. It's starting from nowhere, not knowing anything. How do you do that? I just initially thought of an idea of there's an app called Urban Spoon, which is like a fruit machine of restaurants. So basically, you shake it up and you get 3 restaurants in your area that come up, like 3, you know, 3 settings. And so I thought, well, what I'll do is, I imagined it would be 3 different percussion instruments. So like bongos, conga, and I don't know, tabla, whatever. You shake it up and then you get different one. And then you go over and you have some solo pads that you would solo on over the top of the grooves that have happened. You know, maybe some filters and some effects and stuff. So that was my idea, but then I didn't know how to action the idea. And so what I did was I downloaded every single percussion app or music app that I thought was relevant, and then started contacting all the developers. You can go and contact them through the website or whatever. And so I contacted like loads and loads, and they're, you know, nothing's happening. And then Jesse Chappell of Sonosaurus had a best-selling app called Thumb Jam, and him and his father are both drummers, and so he came back and he's like, oh yeah, I would love to do it, let's do it. So those things come about like that, you know. But it's that, you know, how it's goes back to the being patient. You know, I think we're in an age now where people want things really quickly. I mean, the idea from the inception of the idea to release was 3 years, you know. So you got to be patient with stuff. People want things too quickly nowadays and want to get it out immediately, you know. So I think patience is a virtue, so they say. Great. So I think are we good? We're good with the questions. I want to thank you know, everyone, Jules and Jerry and Derek and Don and everyone at DW, Scott, everyone at DW and LP, of course, all my companies and everyone for watching it. So thanks for you know, letting me do this and be part of this. I want to let a slightly different kind of story emerge as to, you know, how it all came about, and still pushing forward, trying to find different things, do different things. So you can find me on all these social media sites, and look out for the live stream that will be coming soon with the Lockett Vitesse band, and yeah, I hope to see you soon. I hope to see you on the road soon. You know, play some music and talk and ask some questions in person. So thanks everyone, and don't forget.